Next up, Max in Cincinnati. Who are the transfers that we forgot about that might shape the college football season in 2024? This is a great question. This really is. Because if we all know the Dillon Gabriels of the world, and then you throw in DJ Uiagalelei, and you can throw in even a guy like maybe a CJ Daniels from LSU, Isaiah Bond goes over to Texas. But speaking of Texas, is anybody talking about Maalik Murphy? Do you guys remember him a couple of minutes ago? He balled out in the spring game back in 2022, and then literally everybody wanted him on their roster. There was phone calls going behind closed doors, and he was getting NIL offers, and boosters were all saying with their big cigars in their mouth, son, you want to come be a part of this system. And he did it. And so he waits, and then they realize, well, at this point, Arch Manning is the future down in Texas, so I got to go elsewhere. And he hitches his wagon to Manny Diaz. And then it got really quiet in Durham. And nobody has brought up Maalik Murphy, even though he did win 2 games last year and was very potent in those games. It's because it's Duke. Like nobody talks about Duke in football. Like even when Mike Elko was getting wins with Riley Leonard and was showing you the ropes that he was making the strides, 9-win seasons for the Blue Devils, nobody talked about it. But just because nobody talks about it, the fact that you're a dual threat quarterback with a high profile cannon of an arm, you can utilize your legs on 3rd and short to keep drives alive, not to mention that you are going to a system that I think is going to cater to your strengths. Maybe Duke isn't a team that we're talking about going to a college football playoff, but they are a team that is going to be playing multiple ACC contenders. And if Maalik Murphy lives up to the expectations of how he did when he was in Steve Sarkisian's offense, well, at worst, we're talking about this guy being a spoiler. Maybe not an elite playmaker in terms of what you're looking for with the overall upside, but definitely a guy that's going to come on in right away and give you that oomph that gives you a new era of Duke football. Speaking of quarterbacks, Max Brosmer. Anybody remember that name? FCS quarterback from New Hampshire, was phenomenal last season, threw for over 3,400 yards. He had like 29, 30 touchdowns at New Hampshire. Well, now he's going on into PJ Fleck's offense out in Minnesota, and this was one of the worst in college football last year. They were disgustingly bad. And I do think that when you look at what Minnesota is, they're always in that conversation of maybe not tier 1, but certainly low tier 2, high tier 3 of the Big Ten. They may be a team that, once again, we're talking about just like Duke, doesn't get to the college football playoff, but certainly is a reason why you get upset. Speaking of Big Ten, let's stay there for a minute. James Madison lost Kurt Signetti, and they also lost like 14 players all to Bloomington, Indiana, including Elijah Surratt. This was a guy that last season averaged 14 yards per play. He was the number 1 receiver for this offense underneath Jordan McLeod. 82 receptions. I think it was like 1,200 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. Well, it's a similar offensive identity that's going to be right in Bloomington that he knows extremely well. And they also bring in a quarterback by the name of, why am I blanking on it? It's the Ohio kid, Curtis Rourke. He's going to be, I think, a really good fit for Signetti's offense. So basically what really worked out for the Dukes is now hopefully going to work for the Hoosiers in 2024. So I'm really interested to see what this is. And speaking of Dukes, we're not going to talk about Duke, and we're not even going to talk about the Dukes, but we are going to talk about a former Duke player, Jordan Waters. He's now going over to NC State. Last season averaged 5.4 yards per play, 819 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground. He's now going to an offense that knows how to utilize the rushing attack. Depth, taxes, somehow Dave Duran having a great running back room. And they also have a very good offensive line returning to Raleigh this upcoming year. The other part, they bring in Grayson McCall at quarterback. This is a year where everyone's talking about NC State as like being that sleeper team. I don't consider them a sleeper at all. If you were to ask me, Miami is clear-cut number 1 in the ACC, and then you go to tier 2, and it's like Florida State, and you could probably throw in Clemson because at least Vegas thinks so. I'm not entirely done with them either. And then you throw in NC State and you say, well, they're returning a lot of talent offensively. They have a pretty decent defense, and they always seem to produce defensive linemen. And now they're bringing in a running back that last year cooked and carved up ACC units on the regular. What are we missing with the term sleeper team? No, you should be paying very well attention to what the Wolfpack are doing in 2024. A couple other names that I want to point out. Texas is bringing in Silas Bolden, and a lot of people are saying, well, why are we not talking about Silas Bolden? because if he wasn't on campus this past offseason. No, he was still finishing up his degree at Corvallis with Oregon State. And so he wasn't here for the spring. So when Matthew Golden was going off and when you were hearing things about Jonte Cook and when you were hearing things about Isaiah Bond, yeah, really cool. But Silas Bolden might end up actually being better than all of them. Straight line speed or not, the kid is a human jet. He will fly down the football field and make mincemeat out of you. He just knows how to find the open avenues, creases, and become a really big difference maker. I love what he is going to add to this offense. He's going to fill into that role alongside, I think, a Jonte Cook. There is a lot of opportunity to utilize him in so many different ways, including on special teams. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the 40 acres. I think that there's a lot of talent that is going to be in Austin that needs to step up, and that's one of them. By Job, yeah, that's a real name. You know what else he is? A real player and a really good one. Last season played at Michigan State. He was a part of that group that all left this offseason when Jonathan Smith came on in. Well, he's going to Kansas. He's going to, let me phrase that, Kansas. Go back in time and talk to yourself about a moment where Kansas was landing premier players in the transfer portal that actually were going to be impactful. What would it be? 2007? Are we going back to Mark Mangino with the big mustache and bald heads on the sidelines? Is the Big 12 still featuring Texas and Missouri and you have the rivalry? Kind of, for being completely honest. Not the point. The point is, when you look at By Job, the thing that really stands out about him, he's a good pass rusher. Last season, he only played in one game, but the year before, he was really, really, really up and coming. He was a high-profile prospect coming out. And he still has 3 more years of eligibility. So I think that this is going to be a really good system for him to flourish in. He's going over to the Big 12. There's question marks in the Big 12. Who stands out? Who doesn't? To me, this is one of those players that might end up being a household name sooner rather than later. Speaking of teams that are going to be household names, let's talk about Memphis and the addition of Mario Anderson. Senior running back from South Carolina goes on over to the Volunteer State. And he's going to be playing against Group of 5 talent. He's going to the American Conference. Last season, behind a makeshift offensive line in Columbia, had 3 touchdowns. But he did also average 5 yards per play. Anybody do the math? 4 or 5 yards per play, 2 runs per carry, 10 yards, first down. So the guy is going to be able to move the sticks. He goes into an offense that has a lot of positivity with Rock Thomas coming back, with Seth Hennigan coming back, with Ryan Silverfield kind of reinventing himself last year. I really like this Memphis team. I love the addition of Elijah Herring defensively. They bring on over the Old Dominion safety, really good player. I'm not going to try and say his name right now because I'll just butcher it. But there is optimism that Memphis is the most prepared team to make that jump to the Group of 5 as that representative in a 12-team playoff. And maybe they get an upset. I would not be shocked, especially if you have a player like a Mario Anderson that comes on in and impacts you in a similar way that you're expecting your team to. Speaking of Marios, Mario Williams says goodbye finally to Lincoln Riley. I'm done with you. We're breaking up. There's no break. We're not going to be on like a little bit of a pivot, not Ross and Racheling this. No, I'm going to start my own chapter. And now he goes to Tulane. And they also bring in Ty Thompson. And I have made this abundantly clear multiple times. I don't know if he's the best Group of 5 head coach. He's my favorite Group of 5 head coach, John Summerall. In my opinion, it's like you lose one of the best coaches in the Group of 5 and you replace him with the next best coach in the Group of 5. Because that's what it feels like at Tulane right now with John Summerall coming on in with all the defensive players. But Anderson in the slot with a quarterback that already knows what he does because he saw him for years over the last 2 at USC, how they're going to be able to build that function. There's a reason why Tulane is still going to be in the running. And one more in the Group of 5, and then we'll go one more team as well. Jordan McLeod, a lot of people forget, Sun Belt Player of the Year. And a lot of people have seen the video and called me out about Texas State. Well, why are you so high on Texas State? Jordan McLeod entered the chat. I've never seen a scenario where you lose 2 quarterbacks that were proven names at Power 5 programs and you upgrade with the player that already is in the conference where he is going to strap it up in 2024. And you also have G.J. Kinney as your head coach. And when you have G.J. Kinney as your head coach, a rising star in this industry, and Jordan McLeod, I'm very excited to see what this Bobcats offense can be. Maybe they're not going to go to the college football playoff, but I do think they are the favorites to win the Sun Belt. 2 more, Jeremy Bernard at Alabama. Ryan Williams is going to be the favorite and the household name that everyone needs to know, but Jeremy Bernard, he's just unknown because he couldn't get on the field. He couldn't get on the field when he was in East Lansing. He couldn't get on the field last season when he went to Washington because they had 3 basically 1,000-yard receivers. But he has a good understanding of what this offense is. Everyone knows that he will be a plug-and-play addition for what they're trying to work alongside for what they're trying to do with Kalen DeBoer's offense. 34 catches last year, 2 touchdowns. He was playing that secondary role. He's got speed. He's got really good underrated speed. He can be a home run threat. He's going to be, I think, working all across the middle of the field. He had a big touchdown catch during the spring game. I expect him to be a name that we talk about very highly by the season's end. And Geno Pace, a lot of people probably are saying to themselves, I know the face, I don't know the name. Well, Geno Pace is a player that's going over from Wisconsin down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And because we all have had these conversations about what needs to happen for this LSU team in 2024, he's going to be a big-time profile player. Defensive line was not addressed the way that they saw fit, but he is a big-time body. He has impressed the staff, according to people down in Baton Rouge. He's done a really good job addressing, working with Bo Davis in the defensive line. He may be a reason why, once again, here we go. Brian Kelly, we're doubting him going into 2024. We're doubting him in his roster construction. He doesn't know how to recruit. Well, he knows how to work the transfer portal, and Geno Pace could be could be a reason why he is mentioned in the same light. And once again, here we are talking about LSU, 10-3 in the college football playoff. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. That's awesome. Thank you so much. But before you leave, make sure that you hit subscribe. And if you want to check out any of our other great work, make sure you click on one of the videos here. Am I putting it in the right spot? I'm not entirely sure. I'm really not.